WFYI podcasts are brought to you by Gregory and Appel Insurance, dedicated to helping people and businesses navigate the complexities of risk management, employee benefits, and private client insurance. More at GregoryAppel.com.
WFYI podcasts, brought to you by Sun King Brewery, serving beers like Sunlight and Osiris, as well as the new release, Premium Light Lager. More info, including locations, at sunking.com. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. Nia I'man Smith is a scholar and radio host based in Bloomington, Indiana. Nia is currently a PhD candidate in the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology at Indiana University Bloomington. She's also the creator and host of Sonic Blacknuss, a biweekly radio program broadcast on Bloomington's WFHB. Sonic Blacknuss presents a lovingly curated journey through Black music, from jazz and soul to R&B, funk, blues, bossa nova, and Afrobeat. Each episode is built around a theme that traces the connection between history, culture, and memory. I recently spoke with Nia. We discussed her work as a radio DJ and scholar. She also brought some music to share. Let's join our conversation. Nia, we're going to discuss your work in radio and your work in academics and research. I'm excited to learn more about your work. I'm a fan of your radio show, so thank you so much for taking time to do this today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute honor, and, I am just really, really honored, and thank you.
You're currently based in Bloomington, where you've been studying ethnomusicology at Indiana University, but I think you grew up in Oakland. I've learned a lot about you from your show. Tell me a little bit about your background and where you grew up.
Yeah, so I am originally from Oakland, California. Definitely missing the weather there, especially this time of year. From Oakland, I grew up in a household that was just filled with lots of records and lots of books. My parents, Nia I'man Smith, and my father, Anthony Charles Smith, are the reason why I have my DJ name of DJ Ann Charles, and taking names and putting them together just to pay tribute and honor the fact that they are really the ones who have fostered my love for Black music and the types of music that I play on the show. And being raised in Oakland, I was just raised around a lot of music and a lot of culture. And from there, moved to DC to attend Howard University and did Afro-American Studies, which is also kind of folded in with my love of Black music and Black culture. And from there, moved to New York and spent some time doing work in museum education and also arts administration as well, which I think also brings in the public component of the work that I'm interested in doing and that I do through the radio show. And from there, in 2021, decided to return to school and pursue the PhD in ethnomusicology. And so came out here to Bloomington and have been here ever since.
I mentioned you're studying ethnomusicology at IU Bloomington. This is a very unique and specific field of study. What excited you about this field of study? What got you interested in ethnomusicology?
Yeah, well, I really have to give credit to the cadre of particularly Black scholars and Black women scholars who have come through that program and taught and led the program even. So I have to call out names like Dr. Fredera Hadley, who was so generous. When I was living in New York, I was connected with her through one of my god sisters. And so she introduced me to Dr. Fredera Hadley, who went through the ethnomusicology program and said, hey, if you're interested in doing music, you might want to look into ethnomusicology. And then in doing more background work about the department, and then also IU, understanding that giants and titans of the field like Dr. Cheryl Keyes, like Dr. Portia Maltsby, like Dr. Melanie Burnham, right, have a storied history and legacy that they have imprinted within that department, in addition to the Archives of African American Music and Culture, which is housed at Indiana University. And so the combination of all of those factors, they all kind of led me to this route of ethnomusicology, and particularly doing it here. And so they said that it would be a program to study music, and I said, well, all right. And so that is how I ended up doing the study of ethnomusicology.
Nia, I wanted to ask about one of your areas of research that I found particularly interesting. It involves record collecting. I think specifically the record collections of Black women. You've studied how record collecting is an archival practice and a form of ancestor veneration. Tell me about this idea and how you came to this field of research and study.
Yeah, and so that is what my dissertation work is going to be focusing on, and really thinking about the ways that we as Black women use record collecting, or looking to explore how we use record collecting as a way of creating, sharing, and preserving narratives and histories of family, personal narratives, cultural narratives, personal memories, and things of that sort. And the way that I got into that was thinking about my own practice as a record collector, right? And so I'm really fortunate to have a small collection from my mother. I don't have all her records quite yet. But in having some of those records that she has entrusted me with, I also within those records have one of the records of my Aunt Dolores, who passed away when she was really young. So I never got a chance to meet her. But I have her, and thinking about an Indiana connection here, I have her Wes Montgomery album, A Day in the Life. That record is a way for me to have this physical, but also for me, this spiritual remnant, if you will, of my Aunt Dolores, even though I never met her, right? And thinking about the ways that my mother kept that record, and now I am the one who is preserving it and safekeeping it, right? So thinking about the ways that these objects, right, and the music that they are filled with are able to connect us with so much of this personal, of this cultural history, is how it is that I got to that research. And I have to thank my brilliant cadre of fellow scholars and peers who really invited me, as I was talking to them about what I was thinking about for my dissertation, who really invited me to lean in on the maternal aspect of my history with record collecting, in addition to my wonderful advisors, Dr. Maria Hamilton Abagunde and Dr. Salomar Otero, who really invited me to think about my records and saying, no, Nia, that's something that you can dive into and think about for your dissertation work. So that is how that is all come about, and what I'm excited to be exploring as I get ready to begin that journey.
And I want to talk about your radio program, which airs biweekly, Saturday evenings at 8 on WFHB. It's called Sonic Blacknuss Radio. It's also available as a podcast. One thing about your show that I love, and you kind of just spoke on this, is that you play a lot of vintage jazz and R&B music. In the collector world, this music is often sort of objectified in this materialistic way. It's like, oh, this record is worth $850. This is the, second pressing of this record. And you inject so much of the history and humanity into the way you present this music, and I really appreciate that. That's just one aspect of the show. You play a wide variety of music, including jazz, soul, R&B, Afrobeats, Afro-Brazilian music. It spans a wide spectrum. You've described the show as a curation of Black music across time and space. The shows are often presented around themes that are both personal and sometimes universal, sometimes historical. Tell us a bit about what inspired you to create Sonic Blacknuss Radio, and feel free to add anything that I left out of my description of the show.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. You really encapsulated it, So the show itself started in 2023, February 2023. And the way that I got connected with WFHB is that when I moved to Bloomington and was coming into the ethnomusicology program, I had a first-year mentor. And my first-year mentor in the program was a woman named Adrian, who is also a WFHB DJ and is an amazing, amazing scholar around radio, and specifically community radio, doing her dissertation work around WFHB. But nonetheless, when she introduced herself, she noted that, she was a radio programmer. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And, kind of winding back, when I was in high school, my father and I actually had a short-lived pirate radio show called SOS, Speaking on Something, which was a poetry and music show. And so just from that experience, I had always had in the back of my mind radio as this format and this medium that I wanted to fall in. But I say all that to say that radio was such a part of my life. And I knew that in transitioning into this program, if I had the opportunity to do radio work, I would love to get connected with that. And so Adrian connected me with the station and then got invited to pitch a show. And I pitched Sonic Blacknuss Radio, and here we are today. So that's kind of how it is that it happened. But the inspiration behind the show and thinking about the name Sonic Blacknuss, which is very intentional because I'm speaking to the work of Rahsaan Roland Kirk, the great multi-instrumentalist, composer, activist, and particularly his song Blacknuss, Blacknuss, right? And I really use that song as a guide for me, as a scholar, as a guide for myself, somebody doing radio, and thinking about the idea of hearing the Black notes at this time. And so with Sonic Blacknuss Radio, I wanted to create a space where I was playing Black music, but also, just as you spoke to, talking about the personal histories around Black music, right? I have an episode where I have clips of my parents talking about the music that I listened to growing up and playing those songs as well, getting into some history, getting into some scholarship around Black music. And so all of those things, I really wanted to figure out a way to provide and put out on a public platform.
And Nia, I want to jump into the music. You mentioned the influence of Rahsaan Roland Kirk, one of my favorite musicians, a giant of 20th century music. Coincidentally, he played his final show and died in your adopted hometown of Bloomington in December of 1977. He was just 42 years old when he passed away there. Just generally speaking, tell me what Rahsaan Roland Kirk's music means to you, and this track in particular.
Oh, man, Rahsaan Roland Kirk. Well, I first became acquainted with his music when I lived in New York. I was working at the Studio Museum in Harlem and wasn't too far from the National Jazz Museum. And at that time, just as they continue to do today, but they had this specific Thursday night programming where they would show documentaries. And so one day they had something about Rahsaan Roland Kirk, and I wasn't familiar with the name. And so when I get there, they're playing the documentary. I think it's called like Three Pieces of a Dream or something like that, right? And I was just blown away, just seeing him with all of these instruments, playing like 20 instruments at one time. This really dynamic stage performance that he would do. I was just absolutely mesmerized, and so from there, I just dug more and more into his discography. And then when I came across Blacknuss in that particular album, in that particular song, and hear him open up with this sermonic intro, right? When we're talking about within the framework of Black music, thinking about the connections between orality and Black music and how they intersect. He's starting off and, he has, now we gather here at the universe on this particular time to listen to the 36 blank notes of the piano. There's 36 Black notes and 52 white notes. We don't mean to eliminate nothing, but we're going to just hear the Black notes at this time, if you don't mind. And so when I heard him say that and was really thinking about that more and more as I was coming into my scholarship and my scholarly practice, that idea of we're just going to hear the Black notes at that time has really been a guide of thinking about my approach to how it is that I think about, how it is that I hear, and how it is that I present Black music. I'm always foregrounding the ideas of Black scholars and what it is that we've been collectively saying about this music. So I have to, once again, just in thinking about calling out names and this act of ancestor veneration that's so prevalent within my work, I'm thinking about calling the names like Dr. Samuel Floyd, like Dr. Eileen Southern, like Dr. Ali Wilson, right? But these are the Black notes who have let this trail of scholarship for those of us who are in this younger generation to pick up and continue to carry it forward. So it really acts as a citational practice for me. It offers a way to engage in that ancestor veneration and using him as a guide and always calling him up as somebody who's influencing my scholarship. And then also thinking about the Black notes as a way to talk about and to hear the vast depth and breadth of Black music. But that idea of just hearing the Black notes at this time is really that seed in which, Sonic Blacknuss and the idea that in my presentation of it through the radio show is born.
Let's listen to that track. This is Rahsaan Roland Kirk with Blacknuss. That was Rahsaan Roland Kirk with Blacknuss, is selected by my guest this week, Nia I'man Smith, host of Sonic Blacknuss Radio on WFHB in Bloomington, Indiana. Let's return to our conversation. And Nia, the next track you're going to share with us is by a major figure in jazz music, but someone who is really unsung in many ways, Sonny Fortune, a saxophone player. Tell us about Sonny and this track, The Afro-Americans.
The Afro-Americans. This is a song that, particularly when I was still taking classes and I had to get up early in the morning and I needed something to just pump me up. As I was walking through that's the other thing about the move to Bloomington. This weather out here, this Midwestern weather is nothing to play with, right? So in the mornings when I just needed something to pump me up as I was walking to class, the Afro-Americans and Sonny Fortune was just one of those songs that I would play. Great tenor saxophonist, like you said, often unheralded when we have these conversations about the greats within the music, but definitely somebody whose name needs to be shouted out loud alongside Woody Shaw, who is one of my favorites and is playing cornet on this track. I particularly picked this track and thinking about the Afro-Americans because for me, it just sonically embodies many of the African continuities of Black music diasporically, right? So you can hear, and thinking about somebody like an Ollie Wilson and this idea, the heterogeneous sound idea, all the different musical and sonic qualities and instruments that are coming together within this organized musical whole to create this piece, right? You got Jack DeJohnette was just tearing up the drums on it, right? I love how Woody Shaw just has this kind of winding at times in the background, just kind of quietly as you hear his cornet playing, but then coming up full force along with Sonny Fortune and the full, them in unison, right? So just this idea of you're hearing all of these sonic qualities and thinking about how that is a feature of Black music. So that is the Afro-Americans for me.
Let's listen. This is Sonny Fortune with The Afro-Americans. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. We just heard Sonny Fortune with The Afro-Americans, as selected by my guest this week, Nia I'man Smith, host of Sonic Blacknuss Radio. Let's return to our conversation. And Nia, the next track you have to share comes from another artist who is among my favorites, Gary Bartz. You're going to share his song Music is My Sanctuary, which has become kind of an anthem to a lot of music fans around the world. Tell us about it.
Oh, it's just such a good feeling song. Music is my sanctuary. Music is my life. It's just such a feel-good song. And I think it speaks to, like a lot of Gary Bartz's work, the power of music, the healing force of music, right? And thinking about the shirt that you're wearing, you've got the Fela Kuti and Roy Ayers shirt on, right? Fela Kuti talks about music as a spiritual weapon, this spiritual force, this spiritual medicine. And I think that message is just so beautifully communicated in Music is My Sanctuary. And that's certainly the role that it has played within my life. That's certainly the role that it has when I'm in studio. I like to call WFHB my little place of peace, because when I'm in that air room and it's just me and the music, and I think this idea of music being your sanctuary is just perfectly captured by the song.
This is Gary Bartz with Music is My Sanctuary. That was Gary Bartz with Music is My Sanctuary, as selected by my guest this week, Nia I'man Smith, the host of Sonic Blacknuss Radio on WFHB in Bloomington, Indiana. Let's return to our conversation. And Nia, we're going to fast forward to a more contemporary track now by the R&B group We Are King. You selected the track The Story. Tell us about this.
Yeah, and so The Story is one of those songs when I think about songs that are really speaking to or refining where it is that I am now. That's definitely one of those songs. It's talking about somebody taking this journey, following their heart, following what it is that they feel they're destined to do. And, it has lovely lines like, the road is rocky and it may be long, but I know that my soul or my heart is never going to still steer me wrong, right? And so that certainly reflects my journey into this PhD program, my journey in hosting this radio show, doing what it is that I love, following through my heart. Just kind of on the academic side of things, I think there is still very much this notion that if you go into a PhD program, that means that you want to end up being a tenured professor or, writing these long books or things of that nature. And that's never really been my interest with pursuing this program. It was really for me to become more knowledgeable and more steadfast in my study of the music, and then thinking about how it is that I could publicly share that. And so this song just really reminds me of that journey and reminds me to keep going.
This is We Are King with The Story. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. We just heard We Are King with The Story, as selected by my guest this week, Nia I'man Smith, host of Sonic Blacknuss Radio. Let's return to our conversation. Nia, we just heard The Story by We Are King, and you mentioned, before we listened to that song, you mentioned your trajectory as a academic at Indiana University. I did want to ask you about what's next for you, and does Indiana play a role in what's next? Are you going to stick around here, or do you have a sense yet of what you might do after you complete this PhD program?
Well, I will say, and it's no offense to the lovely state of Indiana, but the East Coast does have my heart, the heart. And I miss Trader Joe's. Now, I know that's Trader Joe in Indianapolis. It's
a long drive, yeah.
So I do foresee a return to the East Coast in some capacity, and just continuing to do more public facing work. I would love to continue in radio. It's really a passion of mine. With my background in museums, I would love to return to a museum in the capacity of doing more curatorial or public programming work. as I was on the education side of things before I decided to return to school. And so, so we'll see what's next. We'll see what the story unfolds.
Yeah, well, I hope radio continues to be a part of whatever it is you do next, because you just have such a warm presence on the airwaves. I really appreciate what you're doing. Any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners here in Indiana before we go?
Well, I will just say that first and foremost, I'm so honored and thankful for the invitation. Your work is absolutely amazing, Cal. Everything that you're doing, and I think you have that same warmness and that kindred spirit of a deep love and a deep rigor with your scholarship that you do around the music and the work that you are doing in preserving Indianapolis music history and heritage. And so I just really, really appreciate that. So I want to say that. And then I also just want to share that, I am so grateful that I'm able to share my deep love and my deep reverence for Black music through the airwaves. Every time you hear an episode, you're hearing a little piece of my heart, and I'm just so grateful to be in the position to be able to share that with other people, and that other people trust me to lend their ears to me for an hour of their time to hear this music, to dance, to romance, which is something I'm always trying to get people to do as well with some of the episodes, to listen and to learn. And so those are my goals and my hopes. And, that's my takeaway.
Nia, Sonic Blacknuss Radio airs bi-weekly, Saturday evenings at 8 on WFHB. It's also available anytime as a podcast. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you so much for taking time to do this and share a little bit about your work as a music historian and DJ. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you to my guest, Nia I'man Smith. If you appreciate the arts and culture programming you hear on this station, please consider making a donation now at WFYI.org/give. And check out the Cultural Manifesto podcast at WFYI.org or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cultural Manifesto is hosted and produced by me, Kyle Long. And our radio director at WFYI is Roxana Caldwell. Thank you for listening. WFYI Podcasts, brought to you by Sun King Brewery, serving beers like Sunlight and Osiris, as well as the new release, Premium Light Lager. More info, including locations, at sunking.com.